Since March 10, after the reconciliation between Saudi Arabia and Iran under our mediation, the whole world is like a storm, changing every day. Absolutely turbulent. In the past many years, many people with incomparable strengths came forward, but they were unable to mediate good things. In this short month, the momentum was overwhelming, and many things were resolved. So, what happened recently? The first thing is, the most intractable contradiction in the Middle East will soon be resolved. What contradiction? The conflict between Saudi Arabia and the Houthi armed forces in Yemen. The armed conflict between the two has been as long as 8 years. How to solve it? Recently, it was reported that Saudi Arabia, together with the Omani delegation, went to Sana'a, the capital of Yemen, to negotiate with Houthi armed officials and reach a permanent ceasefire agreement. Houthi leader Mohammed Ali Houthi has met with the head of the Saudi delegation, Mohammed al-Jaber. Saudi Arabia and the Houthis are two sides in the conflict. What about Oman? Is the mediator of the two. Before this meeting, Saudi Arabia was down to earth and first showed its sincerity, released 13 prisoners from the Houthi armed forces. So far, it may not be clear why Saudi Arabia and the Houthi armed forces are the most difficult conflict in the Middle East. So I have to add some background. Let's start with the sect of Muslims. Many people should know that there are mainly two factions, one is Sunni, and Saudi Arabia is now the leader of this faction, the other is Shia, and Iran is the leader. Map of Middle Eastern sects, pay attention to the red circle, because it will be mentioned below. Why are there two factions? It is a bit similar to the problem that our ancient emperor encountered when he was old and how to choose an heir. One faction advocates meritocracy. In simple terms, it means that whoever does it will win, regardless of blood relationship. What about the other faction? They advocate blood relationship, and feel that Muslim leaders must be descendants of the Prophet. The virtuous faction is the Sunni sect. Those who advocate blood relationship are Shiites. Under these two big factions, there are still many small factions that can be separated. After understanding this, let's start with the topography of the Arabian Peninsula. Last map. Did you notice? The Arabian Peninsula is actually quite interesting, close to the Red Sea, from northwest to southeast, there is a tall mountain range, and other places, and then slowly slope down from this mountain range to the Persian Gulf. This mountain range is called the Sirat Range. It's interesting, the further southeast you go, the higher the altitude. When the altitude is high, the moisture in the air can be blocked, and orographic rain will appear. In some places, it can even reach 1,000 millimeters, and green trees can grow and farmland can be opened up. Rice terraces in the mountains of Sirat. What about the rest of the Arabian Peninsula? Except for a little bit of Oman, the precipitation in other places is basically less than 100 millimeters. It became a desert area. Anyway, how to say? The old saying back home in Saudi Arabia is wrong, knowing that you may die there, but there will always be a desert you want to cross. The Arabian Peninsula is not all deserts, it is also a place full of greenery. The most green place is called Yemen. As long as you are a human, if you don't really have no choice, you definitely don't like living in the desert. Arabs do. Therefore, this green place has been enviously called Happy Arabia by people from other parts of the peninsula since ancient times. What does the name Yemen mean? It is happiness. Almost 100 years ago, when Ibn Saud established Saudi Arabia, in addition to the traditional sites of Najd and Hijaz, he also marched south along the Red Sea and ate a large piece of Happy Arabia. Although not all happiness can be obtained, some happiness is also good. As a result, a distant cause is planted. What's the matter? The Happy Arabia that Ibn Saud swallowed was inhabited by Zaydites, not Sunnis, though they were also Arabs. This is the origin of the red circle above that everyone should pay attention to. This Zayd faction is also quite strange. Many news reports now say that it is a branch of the Shia sect. In fact, for a long time, the Shiites in Iran and Iraq did not think that they were of the same clan at all. Because of this distant cause, there is a proximate cause. We all know that in the deserts of Saudi Arabia, very rich oil and natural gas were discovered, and suddenly became very rich. After it got rich, it thought about how to use money to cross the border between Saudi Arabia and Yemen to promote its own set of teachings. The Zayd faction suddenly felt a lot of pressure. How to do it? The older generation first decided to learn from the West, set up a truth party, and wanted to win the election. But this span is too big, and it fails every time. What about the younger generation? They took the lower level route and set up a religious organization called Youth Believers. It works well and is very popular. The leader was a scion of a religious family named Hussein Hussein. He looks quite like Liu Liangwei. Yemeni President Saleh felt that the situation was not good, so he hurried to suppress it without saying a word. What about Hussein Houthi? Maybe the level of education is not very high, and he doesn't have any ideas of his own. Maybe because the Zaydites and Iranian Shiites have a little similarity in basic teachings, he borrowed Iranian slogans and cursed Saleh as pro-us and pro-Israel. Then raised the banner and fight against Saleh. This Yemeni version of Liu Liangwei was even more miserable. He died after fighting for a long time. His father, Badruddin Hus, took the case and inherited a bit of chaos here, his son's behest, and led everyone and Saleh to the end. Any armed force must display a banner. Even the anti-government armed forces in the wild valleys of Africa often use the fashionable banner of National League for Democracy or something. This armed force does not follow the usual path. Everyone said, in order to commemorate Hussein Houthi, we are called Houthi Armed Forces. Everyone is from the mountains, and what they pay attention to is reality. So those vain things will not be done. What is the extent of this armament? To give an example, the Iranians look at it, hey, why did such an armed force rise in the southwest of Saudi Arabia? So he quickly sent someone to serve as a military advisor there. So some Western reporters asked the Houthis, I heard that Iran sent military advisors to you. Is there such a thing? This is simply a trap. The contradiction between Saudi Arabia and Iran is very serious. In addition, its founding king has swallowed a large piece of happy Arabia, and the people living on it are Zaydites. The place where the Zayd faction lives in its territory is connected with the Houthi armed forces. Saudi Arabia must be afraid of affecting it. How did the Houthis answer such an obvious trap? They said, the Iranians did send military advisors, but we ignored them, they were just hanging out. The result is good, one sentence offends both sides. What the Saudis heard, Iran sent military advisors. What the Iranians heard was, the military advisors we sent, the Houthi armed forces simply ignored them. So the Saudis decided to fight it. But being so honest also has an advantage, when we get along, things are simpler. Therefore, the combat effectiveness of the Houthi armed forces is relatively strong. How to say? Although they are disheveled, they are just a group of troops wearing slippers, but when fighting, the Saudi troops not only often suffer, but often suffer greatly. For example, once, a light armored brigade in Saudi Arabia was ambushed by the Houthi armed forces. In fact, only one armored vehicle was destroyed, but the Saudi troops were frightened, and all abandoned the vehicle and fled. The equipment of a brigade was just given away for nothing. Armed the Houthis. After Iran knew about it, its unhappiness disappeared immediately, and it was very happy. It hurriedly and secretly sent all kinds of guns, missiles, drones, etc. to the Houthi armed forces. What about the Houthis? It is also very useful, and often creates miracles. The results of it? The territory of the Houthis is constantly expanding. The territory of the Saudis and their supporters is constantly shrinking, and now it has reached the point of confrontation. Everyone can't stand each other. The Saudis are riding a tiger. What about Americans? In the name of protecting the Saudi territory from Houthi armed attacks, they stationed in Saudi Arabia. 2,500 American soldiers live in a base near its capital, Riyadh. After the Khashoggi incident in 2018, why did Saudi Arabia have to spend $100 billion to buy American arms after being scolded bloody by the Americans? It can't help. There is Iran in the distance, and the Houthi armed forces nearby. What about at home? There are these 2,500 American soldiers. The result is, Saudi Arabia and the Houthi armed forces are fighting each other, and the American fisherman benefits. With that amount alone, the per capita income of U.S. soldiers stationed in Saudi Arabia is as high as $40 million. The conflict between Saudi Arabia and the Houthi armed forces has both religious and historical reasons, as well as the reason for the competition between Saudi Arabia and Iran, and the reason for the United States. Is it extremely complicated? Is it the most intractable contradiction in the Middle East? Otherwise, the Americans wouldn't open their mouths so loudly and come up with such a high per capita income. At this point, everyone understands, The reconciliation between Saudi Arabia and the Houthi armed forces not only means that everyone no longer has to fight, but also eliminates the reason for the US military to be stationed in Saudi Arabia. In the future, the per capita income of the US military will be $40 million, which will never happen again. For Saudi Arabia, it can also get rid of a heart problem, and there is no need to worry about the US military's elbow changes. Let's talk about the second thing. In the past 2 days, Brazil and Argentina, the two major South American countries, have successively, we are going to return to the South American Nations League. What is the Union of South American Nations? On paper, the scale is huge. Argentina, Brazil, Uruguay, Paraguay, Venezuela, Bolivia, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, Chile, Guyana, and Suriname, a total of 12, basically covering the entire South America. There are also 2 observer states, Mexico and Panama. What about ambition? It's also quite ambitious. After the establishment of this alliance in 2004, everyone clamored for various good ideas. We want to engage in a unified South American market. We want to establish a unified South American central bank and issue a unified currency. We also want to build a unified South American army. Just listening to slogans, Glass is absolutely awesome, and he is in such a mess that he wants to compete in the Americas and the United States. So the question arises, Americans want such an alliance to exist? Obviously don't want it. Then something went wrong. After the alliance was established, Colombia at that time had a good relationship with the Americans. It first found fault with Venezuela, which made the Venezuelans very unhappy, then sent troops across the border to Ecuador, which made Ecuador furious. There is another country that also has a good relationship with the United States. Peru. The president of Bolivia at the time was Evo Morales. The Peruvians said that he had made a mistake and announced the recall of the ambassador. The two had another fight. After that, anyway, from time to time, some countries jumped out, found a small problem, and quarreled with other countries. Why is this happening? There is America behind it. Then in 2018, the right wing of South American politics at that time, that is, the pro-American group of people resurged. In that year, Brazil, Argentina, Chile, Colombia, Paraguay, and Peru announced the suspension of participation in the Union of South American Nations. This alliance is dead in name only. Because countries with a larger area and a larger population almost all ran away. Brazil and Argentina are big countries in South America. Their return means, the alliance that gave the United States such a headache and finally dismantled is back. So this is another big change. Speaking of this, I don't know if you have noticed, it has only been almost a month since the Sino-Sheikh joint statement on March 10, but a lot of things have happened in this month. The pattern of the whole world has changed a lot because of this. Why did these things happen all of a sudden? Simply put, it's time. This short month is very similar to a past event that happened in the state of Jin in the spring and autumn period more than 2,000 years ago. What's the matter? The 3 families wiped out their wits. In the late spring and autumn period, the entire state of Jin was controlled by 4 families. The most powerful family is Cixi. Its head is Boji. According to historical records, this man is very powerful, tall, and handsome. He is skilled in martial arts, good at archery and driving. He is not only good at martial arts, but also literary. Debate. The diction is beautiful. His character is also strong and resolute, decisive, and brave. How to describe it? Absolute hexagon talent. The Ji family is the most powerful, and the most capable family member, so there are younger brothers to follow. One is the Wei family and the other is the Han family. All belong to 4 families. Among the 4 families, only one refused to accept Ji. Zhao. 3-1, that is a must-win battle. So Jibo felt that he would win, and he was not very polite to Wei and Han, so he asked them for land. What about these 2? They were also afraid of Cixi, so they gave him all the good land. But what about in the heart? It must be extremely unpleasant. After Zhibo got the land of the 2 families, he became even more arrogant, and sent someone to go to the Zhao family to ask for the land. Seeing Zhao's refusal, Zhibo was furious, and called the Wei and Han families to beat the Zhao family. Those 2 families were afraid of him, so they dispatched troops to fight together. The Zhao family, how can they beat 3 families? Can only stick to Jinian City. What about Zhibo? He was very clever. Seeing that it was difficult to attack the city, he dug the embankment of the Fen River and poured water from the Fen River to irrigate the city. The city was quickly flooded, and people crowded on the walls. The city walls at that time were made of earth, and if they were soaked in water for a long time, they would easily collapse. Taibo asked the head of the Wei family to drive for him, and the head of the Han family acted as his guard. While watching the water, he said triumphantly, "Now, I know that water can also destroy a country." The faces of the heads of the Wei and Han families suddenly changed. The capitals of their two families, like the Zhao family, were built by the river. Just at this moment, the Zhao family sent someone to contact them and said bluntly, "Zhao's today is your tomorrow. If the Zhao family is destroyed, it will be your two's turn next." Wei and Han gritted their teeth and decided to form an alliance with the Zhao family. On the same day, the three families joined hands to attack Zhishi's army, and finally got rid of Zhishi. That hexagonal talent, Bo Clays, who was awesome, also died in the hands of Zhao Shi. Seeing this, do you think Biden is actually quite similar to Jibo? At first, he also had a bunch of younger brothers, such as Europe, such as Japan and South Korea. Like Taibo, Biden was ruthless when he started. For example, he caused a war between Russia and Ukraine through fighting, so the countries had to follow the lead of the United States. The war made it difficult for Russia's natural gas to enter Europe, and the United States sold high-priced gas to Europe. The United States is also taking advantage of the energy shortage in Europe, attracting many European companies to enter the United States. So we have always said that he is confident and methodical. This is not to belittle him, but to say that he does have a few brushes. Since it is so awesome, why has the United States not been going well in the past 2 years? Because the United States has also made the same mistakes as Taibo, like launching a technological war against us, and stuck our necks on ships, like crazily sanctioning Russia, confiscating Russia's overseas assets, and kicking it out of the SWIFT system. This is similar to Taibo diverting water from the Fen River to irrigate Zhao's Jinyang city. The vast majority of countries in the world are afraid of it. Because today, the United States can use these tactics to deal with Russia and us. Tomorrow, if it doesn't like anyone, won't it use these tactics to deal with other countries? So what to do? Since the United States is such a big threat, if everyone can reconcile, they must quickly reconcile. On the whole, everyone is scared. How can the United States go smoothly? Anything under such a background will of course be messed up. So when our counterattack started, in this short period of 1 month, the whole world has actually changed drastically. We have said before, in politics and diplomacy, the most important thing is to make yourself the intersection of the interests of all parties. Once you are at this intersection, everything will go smoothly. The world will open and close for you, and the wind and cloud will work for you discoloration. If you leave, no matter how strong your country is and how many troops you have, you will eventually fail. After Biden came to power, what he did was to let the United States leave this intersection. Why in the last month, but as soon as we launched a counterattack, Biden's entirely out fell apart, with holes everywhere. This is the reason behind it. It's true, the organ was too clever to calculate, and it cost King King's life instead. More than 20 years ago, the artificial intelligence AI model was just an ugly duckling. It has not been fully recognized and used by the scientific and academic circles, especially the statistical community, although most of the AI models also use some basic methods of probability and statistics. I remember that for many years the American Association of Statisticians, ASA, did not recognize NN or even AI as a professional field of statistics. In 1997, I was working in a local medical school. The boss at that time received a research grant for the purpose of introducing new mathematical statistical models to researchers in various departments of the medical school. One of the AI models considered at that time was Neural Network, NN, which was first invented and used. It was a model spontaneously researched and created by people with computer majors or strong language skills. However, we observed and evaluated the use and results with some experts, and finally the NN model was not approved and adopted, but recommended to introduce the latent class model, LCM. After 2000, some large statistical software such as SAS eMiner included the NN model, but it was rarely used in practical applications, especially in articles using data statistics and quantitative analysis published in scientific research. More than 20 years ago, the artificial intelligence, one of the AI models considered at that time was neural network, NN, which was first invented and used. It was a model spontaneously researched and created by people with computer majors or strong programming language skills. However, we observed and evaluated the use and results with some experts, and finally the NN model was not approved and adopted, but recommended to introduce the latent class model, LCM. After 2000, some large statistical software such as SASE-Miner included the NN model, but it was rarely used in practical applications, especially in articles using data statistics and quantitative analysis published in scientific research. One of the main reasons is that, such as NN model, any linear and nonlinear variables can be input, and the process of data processing itself and methodology, are like a black box that is difficult to perform quantitative analysis and description, and the final output, the results, are also difficult to explain. It is often secretly ridiculed as garbage in and garbage out. But in the past 10 years, the ugly duckling has finally become a white swan. With the rapid development of computer science, artificial intelligence science, and data science, as well as the continuous emergence of interdisciplinary subjects between these sciences, the mature application and specific results of artificial intelligence models have been accelerated. AI models have made great progress not only in image processing, language processing, machine learning, automatic driving, image analysis, medical diagnosis, battlefield situation awareness, battlefield decision-making, automatic weapon systems, etc., but also in data analysis and other fields. And applications, the results are more and more impressive. It is said that AlphaZero, Google's chess champion, is a top-end 3-layer deep learning NN model similar to the one shown below. AlphaZero uses a combination of deep neural networks and Monte Carlo research algorithms to evaluate locations and make decisions. Picture. Artificial intelligence AI is not what it used to be. Although the processing, structure and function of algorithms and model procedures, as well as the interpretation of results and methodology, are not so precise and complete. But the results and the market can prove and explain everything. For example, we and several of the largest financial companies have used AI single-layer NN models since 2017 to replace the original mathematical statistical models for cash flow forecasting. The accuracy and customer satisfaction are better than those of past mathematical models. Stats are better. So far, nearly 30% of the hundreds of registered models used in various fields of the company are AI models. And the AI model has been separated from all statistical models, and is mainly managed by experts in the field of computer science and data science. Currently, the company has allowed 100 R&D professionals from various departments to evaluate ChatGPT and other AI language software. It won't be long before a decision is made on whether to buy and use these new AI tools. There are also large companies that are already researching and developing the use of AI technology for stock market investment decisions and risk management. Picture. Some initial feelings after playing ChatGPT for a few days. According to Chat's own introduction, it is an artificial intelligence language model developed by OpenAI. It is based on the GPT, Generative Pre-trained Transformer, architecture and has been trained on vast amounts of text data from the internet, enabling it to generate coherent, context-relevant responses. ChatGPT is able to understand and generate text in a conversational manner, making it suitable for tasks such as answering questions, providing explanations, providing suggestions, and participating in discussions. It can also work on a wide range of topics and domains, although its responses are generated based on patterns and examples present in the training data and may not always reflect the latest information. First, what? ChatGPT has a large-scale training dataset. Although I don't know its internal structure and function, it can be inferred from its products and results that it has been based on a large number of readings, and a language and knowledge condensed into an elite data set summarized in simple terms. All in all, it is difficult for a clever woman to cook without rice, and without good ingredients, even the best chef can hardly cook superb food. Although occasionally there may be a small probability phenomenon of turning decay into magic. In graduate schools in the United States, students are often required to read a large number of books and articles in class, and be able to grasp the key points in the shortest time and condense them into highly structured essences. For example, you read a 20-page article in an academic journal and summed up 10 key points. First, according to the content of the article, these key points are summarized completely exhaustive, and there are no major omissions. At the same time, these key points are relatively independent and mutually exclusive at the same level of content logic. The current ChatGPT can be completed in a few seconds, and even if you have speed reading training and certain professional knowledge, it will take at least half an hour. It is also reported that Microsoft is preparing to integrate the AI language model Copilot into MS Office, which has a function to quickly read and summarize any input article. In the end, the 10 key points are summarized. They are not randomly piled up randomly, but also need to be weighted and sorted according to the content of the topic. Which ranks first, which one ranks 10th? This all requires make sense. Second, the how. Structure determines the function, and the structure may also be deduced from the function. GPT should be a dynamic structure with strong random mobility, caused by the diversity and interchangeability of languages and characters, integrated according to different levels of language concepts. The trained dataset is certainly not a collection of natural language concepts. Its basic unit of language is a neuron-like structured whole that has been summed up to a certain level. There is nothing new under the sun. Although ChatGPT is a new thing that has just appeared, the internal logic and methods of human thinking it uses will not be completely new. It can be inferred that the basic rules and methods of its first language logic algorithm should be similar to the way of thinking of subsystems, that is, each thing and phenomenon can be divided into at least 3 levels in terms of language concepts, that is, from top to bottom, parent system, subsystem, system, system, and subsystem, subsystem. When dealing with questions, each level is arranged and combined into its own algorithm system and the rules of the overall algorithm system to generate the best answer. This is also the pattern in which NNS resemble neuron structures. The 3 levels in the middle of the figure below are typical examples of subsystem thinking. Picture. The method of inferring the language logic algorithm of ChatGPT is naturally carried out according to the characteristics of the dataset. Each problem is processed from the point of language concept to all related lines, and then to all related surfaces. Just like human neurons, multi-line, multi-dimensional and multi-surface are continuously integrated for correlation, and finally processed to the whole answer. At the same time, it can be seen from the results of ChatGPT that its algorithm and logic are more or less inherited and use some basic methods of human thinking and knowledge construction, such as inductive, top-down, and deductive reasoning, button-up, divergent thinking and convergent thinking. There are also the wise sayings of a large copy of the world's articles, and summarization is also a kind of creation. Of course, tricks vary from person to person, and each has its own ingenuity. Each AI software also has its own characteristics and characteristics. Third, why? Because the data set used in training includes the most extensive information resources on the internet, that is, the largest database. Therefore, tolerance is great, not only the judgment of the final answer according to Chat's own answer. When generating responses, ChatGPT uses probability distributions to determine the likelihood of different words or word sequences in the context. It uses it from training. Conditional probabilities are calculated from patterns learned in the data. The model then samples from these distributions to generate a response, taking into account context and the probability of occurrence of different words or phrases. In short, the answers generated by ChatGPT should all be high-probability events and phenomena in human society and knowledge. Not only from the commercial level, ChatGPT should also be applicable to the most common countries and people. Moreover, from the perspective of the ultimate purpose of commodities and products, they should follow the interests of serving the broadest masses of the people. So the extremists in society will be more disappointed. For example, if you ask some extreme questions, such as Sino-US war, FG, or Taiwan independence, the answers you get are very neutral and relatively objective. Final feeling, ChatGPT and the development of human thinking tools have the same law, that is, the more advanced and developed the tools, the more important the subjective initiative of the human subject. This is not only to fully understand and master the functional characteristics of the tool, and to know how to use it correctly and fully, but also to have the correct concept and theory to guide you to the correct question. The same is true for ChatGPT. In a word, your question determines the quality and quality of the answer you will get, and also determines the function and quality of this tool. In this regard, Some people concluded that asking questions is more important than solving them. At the same time, your knowledge accumulation and ability ultimately determine whether you know the goods, or turn a blind eye, pass by, and cannot really use and make good use of the results produced by AI tools. The following are some specific experiences and feelings, including some interesting examples. How big is the database used during ChatGPT training? There are a lot of articles in the world, and ChatGPT copied the articles in the world, not just limited to 1 or 2 articles with names and surnames. The training of ChatGPT is not based on a specific database, but through training on large-scale internet text data. OpenAI uses a wide range of internet text data sets, including Wikipedia, web articles, forum posts, news articles, and more. It should be noted that Chat's training data is achieved by self-supervised learning on a large amount of internet text, which means that ChatGPT is generating responses rather than performing supervised training on specific databases or domain-specific data sets. Regarding the size of the specific data set, OpenAI did not publicly disclose detailed information. Since the training process involves huge computing resources and time, as well as restrictions on data usage rights, the specific size and composition of the data set is the content of OpenAI's internal management and decision-making. But when you realize that the questions you ask are answered incorrectly, or there are mistakes, then the natural reason is that the data set does not have enough data and knowledge support. For example, when I asked Chinese TCM about the theory and concept of kidney qi, ChatGPT answered perfectly and comprehensively. Picture. But I asked Chinese TCM about the theory and concept of moisture, and obviously the basic concept was wrong. Because the theory of dampness and dampness in traditional Chinese medicine is different from the usual physical concepts of water and dampness at the beginning, but a metaphysical concept that includes physiology, pathology, ecological environment, and human integrity. It's just that ChatGPT doesn't read enough books about Chinese and Chinese medicine, and the knowledge accumulation is not complete enough. Picture. What is the time frame for Chat's data updates? As an AI language model, the ChatGPT response is, as of May 2023 based on training processing from the internet and other text sources, my knowledge is as of September 2021. This means that my responses reflect the information and events. I cannot get real-time or updated information after that point. For example, I asked about the lyrics of a female kindergarten teacher who just came out 2 months ago and became a sensation in China. Obviously ChatGPT has no material, but the correct judgment is a problem related to literature, so the following 4 very interesting vernacular poems are made up. Obviously one should keep in mind that the time difference between the ChatGPT dataset and any present is 20 months so far. That said, when you ask about anything that happened in the last 20 months, you probably won't get the right answer. Picture. As for how ChatGPT can be used to predict the stock market, the following is its own answer. Of course, it does not deny that Wall Street has always had its own software for predicting the stock market, and its data is updated daily or even instantly. Picture. What is the moral judgment value judgment system of ChatGPT when answering questions? ChatGPT has no built-in moral judgment or value judgment system. As a language model, ChatGPT learns the ability to generate text responses through a pre-training and fine-tuning process. It does not have a built-in ability to make clear judgments about moral or value issues, nor can it provide an entirely accurate or authoritative moral perspective. When answering questions, ChatGPT does its best to generate relevant and reasonable responses, but the content of the responses may be based on patterns and potential biases in the training data. Since its training data is drawn from large-scale text collected from the internet and not screened for a specific moral framework or value system, the responses may be limited and skewed by the text data. Picture. Does ChatGPT use any mathematical and statistical patterns? Yes, there is nothing new under the sun. ChatGPT says it leverages mathematical and statistical patterns in its training and generation process. It is based on a deep learning architecture called a transformer, which is a neural network model. Deformers use mathematical operations, such as matrix multiplication and nonlinear activation functions, to process and transform input data. During the training phase, ChatGPT optimizes its model parameters through a process called gradient descent, learning statistical patterns in the training data. This involves computing gradients and updating model weights to minimize the difference between the generated output and the target output for the training data. When generating responses, ChatGPT uses probability distributions to determine the likelihood of different words or sequences of words in context. It computes conditional probabilities based on the patterns it has learned from the training data. The model then samples from these distributions to generate a response, taking into account context and the probability of occurrence of different words or phrases. In summary, mathematical and statistical models are fundamental components of the underlying deep learning architecture and training process used by ChatGPT. These patterns enable the model to learn from the data and generate responses based on the learned statistical associations. One of the examples of doing advanced knowledge, the concept and theory of causality. ChatGPT provides 7 theories about causality in less than 1 minute. I compared several Wikipedia topics on related concepts and theories. Chat's answer is not only relatively complete, but also highly concise. Of course, due to the high degree of generalization, each theory is just scratching the surface, so far. For example, structural equation modeling, SEM, has been widely used in social sciences, economics, and other fields in the past 20 years, and there are also a large number of textbooks, documents, and materials on the quantitative analysis and statistics of SEM causality. The following is Chat's answer. Causality is a fundamental concept in various fields, including philosophy, science, and statistics. There are several theories and perspectives on causality that attempt to explain the relationship between cause and effect. Here are a few salient concepts and theories related to causality. Regularity theory. According to regularity theory, causality is based on the regularity or pattern of events. It holds that a cause is an event followed by a specific effect with a high degree of regularity or frequency. This theory emphasizes the empirical observation of repeated associations between cause and effect. Counterfactual theory. A counterfactual theory of causality defines causality in terms of counterfactual conditions. It states that a cause is an event, and if it had not occurred, the effect would not have occurred. This theory explores causality by considering alternatives to hypotheses and evaluating differences in outcomes. Probabilistic causation. Probabilistic causation recognizes that causation is often probabilistic rather than deterministic. It shows that a cause increases the probability of an effect occurring but does not guarantee it. This theory takes into account the likelihood or statistical association between cause and effect. Mechanistic causation. Mechanistic causation theory focuses on understanding causal mechanisms or processes, explaining how a cause leads to an effect. It emphasizes the identification of underlying mechanisms, interactions, and mediators that mediate causality. Agency and interventionist theory. Agency theory emphasizes the role of intentional agents or actors in causal relationships. In their view, causation involves the deliberate action or intervention of an agent. Interventionist theory holds that causes are interventions that change the course of events and produce specific effects. Structural equation modeling. SEM structural equation modeling is a statistical framework that combines measurement and structural models to estimate causal relationships between variables. It represents causality using directed paths and allows testing of hypotheses about causal effects. Bayesian causal inference. Bayesian approaches to causal inference use probabilistic models and Bayesian statistics to reason about causal relationships. These methods combine prior knowledge, observed data, and causal assumptions to estimate causal effects and assess uncertainty. It is worth noting that causation is a complex, philosophical concept. Different disciplines may adopt different perspectives and theories to study causality. The choice of theory or framework depends on the context, research question, and nature of the causal relationships being investigated. The second example of doing advanced knowledge, Marx's theory is still useful today. ChatGPT. Karl Marx's theories are still influential and widely discussed today, especially in sociology, economics, and political science. While opinions may vary on the relevance and applicability of Marx's theory, here are some points to consider. Economic analysis. Marx's critique of capitalism and his analysis of the economic system remain influential. His concepts, such as class struggle, the labor theory of value, alienation, and exploitation, provide insight into understanding economic dynamics and inequality. Marx's focus on the relationship between labor and capital remains relevant when discussing income inequality, globalization, and wealth distribution. Social inequality. Marx's emphasis on social class and its impact on society is still relevant today. His framework highlights the structural inequalities rooted in the capitalist system, drawing attention to the concentration of wealth and power in the hands of a few. Discussions of income inequality, social mobility, and social stratification often incorporate Marx's ideas and perspectives. Political economy. Marx's analysis of political economy examines the relationship between economic systems, power dynamics, and political structures. His theory of historical materialism holds that economic conditions determine social development, providing a lens for understanding historical and political change. Marxist views of the role of the state, imperialism, and capitalism in shaping political institutions continue to inform debates in political science. Social movements and activism. Marx's ideas have influenced social movements and activism throughout history. His focus on collective action, labor rights, and labor movements inspired various social and political movements advocating for social justice, workers' rights, and equality. The Marxist framework continues to shape the analysis and strategy of activist groups and organizations. Criticism and evolving interpretations. Marx's theory also faced criticism and was reinterpreted over time. Scholars and thinkers have criticized aspects such as determinism, historical materialism, and the viability of the Marxist socialist model. Furthermore, Marx's ideas have been adapted and reframed to respond to changing social, economic, and political contexts. It is worth noting that while Marx's theories offer valuable insights, they are not without limitations. Different interpretations and adaptations of his work exist, and the relevance of specific ideas may vary by context and discipline. Engagement with Marx's theory involves critical analysis, consideration of other perspectives, and understanding of its historical and intellectual context. A specific example of helping with specialized areas, Python, R, and SAS coding and modeling help. For the fields of statistical modeling and analysis, AI, and data science, especially for those doing research or self-study, ChatGPT provides good consulting tools and answers to specific questions. Below are two simple examples of modeling in Python and R. As for how much deep and extensive modeling and programming language consultation and assistance ChatGPT can provide, it needs a lot of specific use to be able to clearly understand. Picture. Finally, Jensen Huang, CEO of NVIDIA, who is currently so popular, delivered a speech at the graduation ceremony of National Taiwan University, saying that AI is reshaping the computer industry and encouraging everyone to learn to be good at using AI tools. It's better to act than to be excited. Anyone who is interested should quickly register for an excavation. Whether you dig and dig and dig in a small garden or in a big garden, you will get harvest and results in the end.